All right, we've got Damion from he's got the EQRP program, and I'd like to have him share with you guys how their program works and what they can do to help you guys reduce your taxable income and how you can take control over your 401k and your IRAs. I told you briefly earlier that I got to listen to Damion speak at an event over the last weekend, and it was incredible. I was very impressed with the information that they provided. It was very thorough, and their what they do is really cool. So after I got back, I immediately put a call in to their company and had a conversation with them and started working through the process of getting some accounts set up for myself and my organization. So I'm very impressed with what they're doing, and I think that you will be as well. Damion's doing a Zoom call. He's in a different time zone. What time is it where you are?
I think you guys are in Pacific, aren't you? In the Northwest.
Correct.
I'm in Pacific as well here in Sedona.
Oh, fantastic! Awesome. All right. I thought you were in the Dallas area. So
my partner that you spoke with earlier is a couple hours ahead, so he and his kids are asleep, and so
okay.
I'm the stand-in. So hopefully the JV team will make you guys happy and a little bit entertained.
All right. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to hand it over to Damion. Let's give him a quick round of applause, and he's going to take it over. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, James. You guys, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? All right. That was either coordinated collusion or it was true. So we're just going to assume that y'all can hear me. And if it starts to sound bad or something's off, y'all just do the big thumbs down and we'll fix it. Let me share my screen with you guys. All right, y'all. So James reached out and was working with my partner, David, earlier today and told me that y'all were in need of some entertainment tonight. So I'm going to do a little stand-up comedy and give you some financial tools at the same time. I'm not very funny, so this is probably going to be mostly details, but I'll try to throw a joke in here or there. I'm the guy that wrote the QRP book, and I also have a podcast Monday through Friday called FU. It's a Financial Underdog podcast. It's funny until they deplatform you, which I'm expecting anytime because I basically attack Wall Street and everything else out there that's kind of the power structures. But it is kind of fun. So if you want to be entertained and maybe cringe a little bit, you can always get more of me if you want, Monday through Friday. The QRP book, I'm going to give you a chance to get it if you want a copy. We'll send it out to you and you can educate yourself more. It's been in print for the last 10 years. This year was the 10th anniversary edition. And I basically wrote this book with a tax attorney 10 years ago to basically take all the information that was out there and give it to you guys in a way that made sense, that was based on fact. And it wasn't just like reading, like a history book full of facts and dates where you fall asleep and it's like a term paper. So hopefully y'all enjoy that. It can be kind of entertaining, some good stuff in there. Just so you know who I am, I'm the guy that can't get a slideshow to start. There we go. So this was, the reason I bring this up, I grew up in Alaska, and just to give you a little background on me, one of my first big boy jobs that wasn't at a restaurant was actually at a camp in the middle of the Arctic Circle where I was washing dishes. And one of the things that you have to do as a dishwasher when you're working in the oil fields in the Arctic Circle is you have to go outside and take the trash out. And if you take the trash out and you look down for more than about 6 seconds, you may become lunch because there are polar bears that are out there. And if it moves, it gets eaten by the polar bears. And so this is part of my experience. Like when people wonder what you've done in your past, one of my experiences was dodging polar bears so that I didn't die on my lunch break or taking out the trash. Just one of those unique experiences. But also part of that experience was the amount of work that went into washing dishes. These were like 14-hour days. Usually it was a 28-day shift. And sometimes I switched between morning or days and nights, which means I would go 14 hours, take an hour off, and then do another 14-hour shift. So you can imagine it's pretty rough. And one of the things that I learned in that was resilience. And it wasn't because I just said, oh, I'm resilient because I'm here. I literally got so frustrated. I called my dad, and I mean, this is kind of embarrassing, but I called my dad and I was crying. I was like 19 years old. I'm like, this sucks. This is hell. I hate being here. And he's like, okay, so what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't want to be here. This is terrible. He said, okay, well, let me tell you about something. And many of you guys, have anybody ever heard of the man in the arena? Like by show of hands, anybody ever heard of this? Teddy Roosevelt's. It's a quote that he had. So my dad, of course, was a big Teddy Roosevelt fan. And the last line, he said, if you fail, at least fail while daring greatly, so that your space shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And I was like, so you're calling me a sissy if I quit? I'm like, all right. So I was like, I can't quit, because then that's just not going to work. So I stuck it out, and I worked there for 6 months until I moved down to Arizona to become a real estate agent, and that was my thing. So I had a choice. The choice was I can either quit, and then I'm going to have this, which is a bad tattoo, or, and I mean, it's bad tattoos suck, but they really suck when they're spelled wrong. But it's quitting. The quitting part is the problem, because then you end up with this lifelong regret. And it was great advice from my dad. The problem was he didn't really follow the advice. And so about 7 years ago, I got a call from him on Thanksgiving, and he said, hey, it was a voicemail right after Thanksgiving. It was like Sunday, and he calls voicemail, and he said, hey, just wanted to let you know, did some tests this week, and it's stage 4. So anyway, hope you had a good Thanksgiving. And I was like, damn, dude, you're going to leave me a voicemail like that? So I sat there, and again, I'm crying. So you guys I'm basically a big crybaby. And I was like, shit. So I got on a plane, went back to Texas, then flew up to Alaska. And the conversation I remember him and I having was at a coffee shop, and he looked at me and he said, there's so many things that I wanted to do. And I remember thinking, whoa, that's regret. He had the tattoo. It was his life, and it was burned into my soul that instead of taking his own advice, he was just giving it. He wasn't living it. And so what I realized is that many people in our lives are examples, like James, an example, somebody to follow. And then unfortunately, there are people where you learn best by looking at them as a warning, not somebody you want to repeat or model. You want to do the opposite. And the opposite of that regret is something I call, and many people call, mastery. And mastery this is one of my favorite books, by the way. It's by George Leonard. And he and I are both martial artists. And it's this process of going deep. And I think the problem is my dad didn't go deep. So he had a lot of quotes and he had a lot of good information, but he didn't really go out there and go deep in anything. And that's one of the keys with anything, with your businesses or your investing, it's to go deep. So the couple of things that I've gone deep on, one is relevant and fun, sort of. And the other one is really important because it connects me to probably a lot of what you're doing. And by the way, mastery, anybody ever seen this number? Anybody a fan of Malcolm Gladwell? So this is like it's the number that was thrown out in his book on the number of hours it takes to really master something, or at least to be in that mastery space. So I've done this with a couple of different things. One is martial arts. So you might be able to see it behind me. I have a few black belts behind me. And this was one of my tests about 7 years ago, or a demo, which was very cool. It was like 3 hours. It was amazing, super fun. At the very end, the last minute, there's 4 guys attacking me. They're punching, kicking, all this stuff. And I took this guy, I threw him in the air, went to the next person, and then I didn't notice where he was. So he was upside down, and his heel hit me in the face and broke my cheek, and I knocked myself out. So sometimes mastery doesn't mean perfection. Sometimes it means a broken cheek. But it was good video. The point of that is most of the rest of the demo looked really graceful and effortless. And that's what it looks like when you guys, and many of you are already there, you're already doing things where people go, wow, it's so easy for you. It's not easy. It's like thousands of hours. And the other thing that I spent that much time in was the real estate space. So in the late 90s, I started buying stuff, and I did it the really smart way. I went out and bought one house at a time, 150 times, which if y'all are thinking about buying 150 doors, there's another thing called an apartment, just like a better idea. I don't recommend this, by the way. But it is a really good learning opportunity. And so my life looked pretty good. I had this big pile of houses and this portfolio and a lot of debt. And the problem when your debt is 15 million is that if there's ever a problem, it's still your problem. But if you add a zero, it's 150 million, then it's the bank's problem. I just didn't quite get there. And even though I thought I was full of, pretty awesome, because I had Will Smith's car from Bad Boys 2, that was pretty impressive. And by the way, that car is really awesome if you want to get arrested. It took me 6 days on Christmas Eve after I bought it to get arrested. So just another word to the wise, good way if you want to meet Johnny Law. And then 2008 happened. So that 2008, for some of you guys, you had the experience of a correction, or your whole life melted down. I went from 20 million with my portfolio to -5 in 12 months. So $25 million swing. The car went away and I had to start over. And it was a great experience on the other side. It was crap in the middle of it, even though I denied it for a while. I'm like, oh yeah, everything's good. People are like, so everything good? You still got your American Express Black Card? I'm like, oh yeah, got my Black Card. Have no house to live in, but I'm good. I can at least buy a nice bottle of wine. It's useful to go through it. It's also really useful to just leverage off of other people's stuff, because one of the things that I learned was I needed a different why. And if you're looking at your business or you're investing as a place for you to make money and that's your why, I can tell you that's probably not sustainable. It's probably going to be something that's going to bite you. My why was always more money. And, my first million was cool, but then I wanted 2 and then 5. And then it just kept going. And the problem is it's never enough, because it's really kind of it's a selfish thing. And I love money, by the way. I love money. I love what it represents. I don't love it because I like dead presidents on pieces of paper. And so the different why that shifted after this, after a lot of coaching and therapy, was breaking financial bondage. It was doing this. It's why when James said, "Hey, can you guys share this tonight at 7:30?" It was an automatic. Of course we can, because there's nothing more important. It's my mission. I look at money as modern day slavery. So if somebody asks me, who are you? What do you do? My answer is I'm a financial emancipator. I'm breaking people's shackles to give them control and a possibility of a life by design, which means you have to understand money and you have to understand how to use it for you, not against you. If you don't understand the rules, your IRS is going to be your worst nightmare the rest of your life. Why? Because over your lifetime, about 70% of your money is going to go away. Ask anybody that's ever done a flip that didn't have some other tax something to help them. And the story is about 60 to 70% of that income went away with self-employment. I mean, and not a little flip, but you do a bunch of flips. And it's the IRS it's a nightmare if you don't understand the rules. Anybody ever, did you guys watch the debate between Donald and Hillary in 2016? Anybody remember that? You remember the question or the statement? Hillary said, Donald Trump doesn't pay any taxes. That's why he doesn't want to release his tax returns. You guys remember that? And his answer? Anybody remember his answer? He goes, that makes me smart. Right? And it does, because he knows that if you're smart, you can go to zero. And it's you use the laws, you have advisors, and Hillary and different people that are of the certain persuasion think about things in terms of being employees, about being forever taxed to death, and that the government's supposed to do a lot of stuff. So there's a difference. 70%, which means you work until September, until Labor Day for the government, or you get to actually keep your wealth and do good things with it. So if we're going to do something different, we've got to think differently. And if we're going to think differently, we can invest differently. And I'm going to show you how to invest differently with some different tools that probably most of you have never heard of. The primary one is the EQRP. And the EQRP is the Enhanced Qualified Retirement Plan. Now, I will tell you that since I created this and I own it and it's our intellectual property, there is nobody else that's doing EQRP unless they're committing, they're breaking the law by basically stealing property. This is a unique system. It's a unique tool. And I'm going to show you how and why it's really important for y'all to know about it. It's basically the Ferrari of 401ks. So when you think about 401ks, most people are like, oh yeah, my company has a 401k, or I have an old 401k. It was in mutual funds, or my current one is stuck in mutual funds. And then maybe you rolled it over. But ultimately, this is the Ferrari, and I'll explain why it's like nothing else and why it's really the best in class. Right now, there's about $600 million in EQRPs in America, and there's a little bit more that's outside of the U.S. because it works if you're international, but it's mostly for people that are in the U.S. and definitely for U.S. citizens. But it's a sizable number, and it's sizable. I think it's cool because that means there's a lot of shackles that are being broken, but it's not sizable that Wall Street cares yet. And when they do, that'll make me happy. Like nothing more happy than a Wall Street actually noticing that they're getting whacked by the little company that only took a few billion out of their pocket. You guys some of you are probably trying to figure out why you haven't heard about it. And it's because Leonardo DiCaprio does not want you to know. It's because, well, I mean, why would you want, anyway, it's the Wolf of Wall Street. The system doesn't want to give you control, because quite frankly, the Wall Street system will tell you, not only does it think, but it'll tell you that you're too stupid and you don't get it, and you should give your money to them so they can fee you to death. And that's the better plan. And so some people will say, okay, I'm going to buy into my financial advisor's suggestion. I'm not saying every financial advisor is a criminal. I'm just saying that there's more than one out there. And the problem I have is that people tend to be misaligned. So when an advisor always makes money off of fees, no matter what happens, they lose half of your money. And it's like, okay, well, they still want golfing and still have the fees. I have a bit of a problem with that. I love fees if you're earning them. I just don't see that where it happens on Wall Street. So the EQRP ultimately takes that control away. It gives you the ability to have private retirement and in a checkbook. So it's totally confidential. It's private. There's no public record of it. It gives you the ability to do deals, to invest in all sorts of things. You can do it in 5 minutes. It's protected. So other things that are out there, like these kind of self-directed type of programs, whether it's IRAs or solo 401ks, do not have the same liability protection that the EQRP does, because the EQRP has ERISA protection. ERISA, if you haven't heard of it, or maybe you have, it's what created 401ks and IRAs back in the early 70s. You cannot get to this type of money. ERISA protection is about the strongest thing that exists in our entire penal code and legal system. There's no UBIT tax, and this is a big deal. Does anybody know what UBIT is? Anybody ever heard of UBIT tax? Okay, I'm going to get into that in a second for most of you. And this works whether you're by yourself, whether you're a one-person operation, or whether you have 50 employees. It's a unique thing. So that's another piece that's really unique. It doesn't make any difference. If you're by yourself, there's something that I think that's missing, and it's that you're probably going to need a team if you're ever going to create substantial wealth. You're not going to do it by yourself. Anybody that creates big wealth always has a team. They don't do it by themselves. And when you have a team, you're going to end up having employees, and that's usually part of it. So when you have control, who cares? Like, what does that mean? It means that you can actually invest in things outside of mutual funds. Things like real estate. You could have real estate in the US, or you could have it in Colombia or Estonia, Italy, Costa Rica, wherever you wanted. I mean, you could have it in Russia if you were crazy enough to invest in Russia, but maybe you wanted to do that. Plan B options, if you ever heard of Simon Black, or just the idea of having a plan B, this is a great way to let the government pay for 30% of your plan B, because it's all going to be pre-tax money if you want it to be. You can buy and hold physical gold and silver. You cannot do that in things like an IRA. So this allows you to, again, let the government basically subsidize your gold and silver. It's like buying an ounce of gold right now for about $1,200. And if you know what gold is, gold's about $1,700 an ounce. So kind of a good discount if you can buy gold for $1,200. You can also buy Bitcoin, crypto, all those different coins that are out there. And I can tell you, because I'm deeply in that space, that crypto is going to change the world with decentralization. And it's really important for y'all to understand that. And you can also invest and make all those potential investments tax-free, which could be a big deal if you end up making, 1,000%. Like people that invested in Bitcoin, held it for the last year, are up 1,000%. So kind of a big deal. It's nice to have 1,000% with no tax. Some of you know about self-directed IRAs. Many of you probably even have them. I do too. I happen to have one. It's an inherited Roth IRA, and I'll tell you why I have that in a second. But I want to give you the specific differences between that and an EQRP so that you're clear on why one is a ticking time bomb and the other one is maybe the best possible way to avoid taxes in the entire tax code. So IRAs are slow. There's a custodian involved. You generally there's friction. Friction is when you have to ask permission. It's like being in elementary school and you have to ask, you guys remember this? You have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. Like, that's kind of what having a custodian is. You want to go to the bathroom, you got to ask permission. EQRP, it's fast and there's no permission. You're in charge. You have control of your money. With an IRA, if you invest in anything that has debt, like real estate, UBIT tax is going to kick your butt. It's going to be a tax that I'm going to show you an example of that you're going to say, oh my gosh, that's a bomb. Not the bomb, but like a bomb that blows up half of or a quarter or some big chunk of your retirement account. The EQRP allows you to have unlimited debt. So you want to go buy into a deal that has 70% debt, great. You get to keep all the profits. And then the last thing is with an IRA, if you put $6,000 a year into anything, if you think that in 20 years, having 120,000 of contributions is going to make you rich, it's not. It's going to make you old. EQRP is a totally different game because you can have 58,000 put in per person per year. So if you think about it, many of you have spouses. That's over 100,000 a year per couple. If you have kids, you could potentially have another 100,000. There's a lot of ways to get money into an EQRP, and it's $6,000 isn't going to cut it. That's not security. That's not even a good foundation. Here's a deal, and I don't know if y'all have talked about syndications, but basically putting money together and doing an investment as a group. This is one that a friend of mine and actually a business partner did a few years ago, and I think it was about actually about 10 years ago. And it was a $50 million build. So $10 million of investor money, $40 million of debt. And 5 years later, the property was sold for $65 million. That people put $100,000 chunks from their retirement accounts and personal accounts. If you had put $100,000 into that deal and you doubled it and you made up to 200, the problem with the IRA is that $80,000 of the profit is subject to tax because it was 80% leveraged or 80% financed. The UBIT tax, which I mentioned earlier, the unrelated business income tax, is a $20,000 to $29,000 tax. So if you used an IRA, your IRA owes tax and you haven't even taken money out. It's just this stupid thing that's in there in the tax code. Basically, the IRS says, hey, it wasn't all your money that made that money, so we're going to tax you. UBIT's triggered by the leveraged income. And most people don't know this is going to come and hit them. And I'll tell you, if you have an IRA that's invested in real estate by chance, I'm going to show you how to fix this. But it's a sneaky tax that nobody really talks about until their accountant says you owe. I've had people say, my accountant told me I was going to owe $200,000. If you look at our website, I'll share it with you later. There's a quote by a guy that was actually in Dallas with me, and his father, because his father switched his IRA to an EQRP, saved $200,000 in UBIT tax the first year that he would have just lost. So IRAs are going to pay this giant tax. It's up to $29,000 for that particular deal. EQRP investors are exempt. Yeah, the code makes them exempt. So if you have the right tool, you go to zero. If you have the wrong tool, you're on your way to that 70% of taxes. I mean, this is stupid and it sucks. It's stupid because there's an alternative and it's a choice. It sucks because if you don't know better, you're just going to get hammered and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, if you have better information, y'all know that Mitt Romney has something like 100 million plus in his retirement account. He knows what he's doing. Rich people use this tool, like really rich people, and it's used because it's a way to avoid taxes. And so it's something that everybody has access to. They just don't know it's available. One of our clients flipped a house, came to me outside of the program. She saw me speak and she said, hey, my husband and I we just sold this house. We're about to make $68,000 in net profit. It was highly leveraged. They used mostly hard money for it. And I said, I'm guessing you have a problem. She's like, yeah, we have an IRA that did this. And I said, oh, yeah, the problem is, she goes, 20,000. I said, that's about right, 20,000. That's what their accountant told them they were going to pay after they closed on the house. About a week later, it was going to happen. And I said, do you want to fix that? And she said, yes, please. And I said, okay. So we converted the IRA into an EQRP and they went to zero. And that means that they got to keep $68,000 tax-free. It took about 15 minutes. So, I mean, if you think about it, has anybody ever seen a commercial, a Geico thing where they say 15 minutes, save you 15%? This is way better than 15%. It's $20,000. So that's the thing. If you know the rules, those $20,000 bills or those checks can stay in your pocket. And it's a big deal if you actually know that stuff. I think any of you would do better than the federal government with that $20,000. And I don't even know y'all, but I guarantee you that I would rather have that money in your hands. And this is how you can do it. So if you already have an IRA that's invested in a deal, easy way to fix it. We take the project or the property or the interest if you have a syndication investment and we move it. It's called an in-kind rollover. Do it every week. We move people's stuff over. Usually it's just about every day. Makes custodians mad because they lose all their fees, but makes me happy because people don't pay tax. And usually it's a win. And ultimately it's about the client. I really don't care if the custodian's losing fees if they're not giving the right information to people. So one of the questions is, who can do this? If you're putting deals together, if you're self-employed, if you have an online business, if you're a passive investor, if you have a W-2, like if you got a job, like that's cool too. Like, I like people with jobs. If you have employees, if you have up to 50 employees, you can do this. And I'll have a few minutes to answer some questions if you guys want. It's really a question of whether you should do it. It's not whether a question of whether you should or whether you can do it. I mean, people go, well, I have a full-time job. I don't have another business. I mean, have y'all heard of eBay? Like there's options to be able to have a side business or Uber, or if you're a real estate agent, or if you have a company, and you guys are mostly business owners, or maybe you're all business owners. So that by itself, you're qualified. Another one of our clients that we just set up an account for last year. So mostly when you hear about tax planning, you hear about tax planning as if you are thinking about into the future. This is called retroactive tax planning. We set up an account for Dr. Kim for last year, just now, like last month, because Dr. Kim made a couple $100,000 And she was able to take 57,000, put it into the plan for last year, even though she did it just now. And it reduced her income down to 143. Because it was a pass-through entity, she was able to then qualify to reduce the income another 20% for qualified business income. Her net income is $115,000. Again, this was like a 15-minute process, and guess what? $20,000. So, and this was after the fact. Like the year ended, and we set this up, and she got this $20,000 check in her pocket. It's having better information and then acting on it. So it's something this just came up. This is a new law. It started January 1st. So it's never happened before. You couldn't do this. If y'all are interested in an EQRP, the way you get money into it is either you roll over old IRAs, 401ks, thrift savings plans, if you're a military or government employee, or you had been, 403Bs, firefighters and school teachers and police officers, as many as you want. The only thing you can't roll in is a Roth IRA or an inherited IRA. That's why I still have an inherited Roth IRA, because I don't have the ability to roll it in. And then if you want to put money in, and as a business owner, you have the ability to put up to $58,000 per year per person. Could be for you, could also be for a spouse. It can be deferred money. It can be Roth money. Do yourself a favor and make sure you have a Roth account. Do it this year. If you don't have one, great, get one. If you have one, get another one. Roth is going to be something I believe will go away, and it'll likely be grandfathered in this decade because the federal government does not know how to not spend. Like they're out of control. They're like drunk sailors. And so they're going to look for places to raise money. Roth accounts are a huge, y'all remember back in the late 90s when Congress balanced the budget and President Clinton and Newt Gingrich and all these people were like, hey, we're so smart, we balanced the budget. You guys remember when that happened? Anybody? I don't know if y'all remember this. They were pretty impressed with themselves. That happened because the Roth account was invented. And what happened is a bunch of people, instead of having their retirement accounts being taxed in the future, they converted them to Roth. And when they did that, all the money that they converted was now income, and it created a bunch of tax revenue. They screwed the future by creating all this revenue then so they could go spend money then. It wasn't because they were so savvy or so good and looking out for us. They found a way to get a whole bunch of rich people an incentive to convert money and then have tax-free Roth accounts forever. I mean, I'm not opposed to Roth. I'm just, I look at what really happened, and I think it'll go away. So it's an important thing to realize you can do, and it doesn't matter how much money you make, you're eligible to do Roth. One of the things that happened as part of the Secure Act, which made things retroactively available that we could do, like Dr. Kim, is that there are many people, and I don't know if any of you have this, but the solo 401ks that have been floating around have been pretty popular for a number of years. It made them really, really uncomfortable because you can not even have part-time employees now and have a solo 401k. It used to be that you could, as long as you didn't have full-time. And I look at that and I go, why would I want to limit myself? The EQRP is amazing because it allows you to grow your business, and you can have full-time, part-time employees. It works for everybody. So big difference. That's why the EQRP it's kind of a category of one. It's the only one of its kind. The game changer that was just launched last week was the Safe Harbor EQRP. And this is actually going to apply to a lot of you. So I would really pay attention to this piece. It's the only decentralized self-directed 401k for small and mid-sized firms in America. And basically what it is, it's a 401k plan that allows you, if you have up to 50 employees, to be 100% self-directed for everybody. The owners and the team all get to direct their stuff, not to which stock, but literally to whatever they want. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate, crypto, physical gold and silver. It's set up as a flat fee service. A TPA is included. So it's a third-party administrator. So as a business owner, you don't have to go and try to figure all this stuff out. It's all included. There are no AUM fees, assets under management. You don't get feed as a percentage of assets. Have $5 million, $10 million in your 401k? Great. This will save you on average $30 to $40 to $50,000 per year in fees alone. So it's on average about 8 to 10 times less expensive than other things, and you have total control of all the assets, and so do the employees. So like many of you probably have 401ks that you're sitting there going, I wish I could do something with that money and get it out of the stock market. Now you can. And it's as simple as converting the old plan. And this is what your employees are going to look like. They're going to be having a damn party because they're going to be able to do what they want and not sitting there watching the roller coaster of the stock market go off a cliff, which I believe it will eventually because things cycle. Some EQRP bonuses, early exits, K-Roths, $50,000 lines of credit, and Bitcoin. one of another one of our clients named Susie is a dentist, and her husband Sam became a real estate professional, so they could do this strategy. They basically had money in their EQRP and wanted to convert it. So it was actually in an IRA. They converted it to an EQRP, and then they converted it from the deferred money to Roth. It was about 300 grand. They then went out and found a real estate from James. Just kidding. It was from somebody. They bought this. It was $1 million building. And because of the current tax laws, they got a $300,000 bonus depreciation expense. Now, when you convert money from pre-tax to Roth, it adds that to your adjusted gross income. If one of the spouses is a real estate professional, you can use bonus depreciation to offset that income. So boom, these two things offset each other. Now their money's Roth, no tax. That money will never be taxed again. What they can do is, if they want, they can take the $300,000 out of their retirement account. I think they're both 45. They can take the $300,000 out, use it for their down payment, and that's one option. So they got their money out, no tax, no penalty. They can also grow that $300,000 tax-free forever, and they can take the $300,000 whenever they want, not waiting till 59 and a half, anytime they want. It's considered basis at this point. This is an amazing strategy to use the retirement system and actually be able to use that money way earlier than 60 years old. The K-Roth, I call these minor deductions. It's the tax code also changed with the CARES, the Jobs Cut Act. I forget which one this was, a few years ago. And it basically changed the tax brackets. So the first 12,200, you have a deduction. So basically you have a zero tax for the first 12 too. If you guys have kids, you should absolutely talk to your tax strategist about paying your kids directly, not through your companies, because then you'll have payroll tax, but directly pay them 12,200. It's a tax deduction for you. It's a taxable event for them, but they're at zero. So you get the tax write-off, they get to pay zero on that 12. And because it's active income, that could actually go into a Roth EQRP. And if you're like, well, my kid is 6. Well, that's me at 6 as a JCPenney model. Now, I did not make them bankrupt with this photo, but it did pay me. Y'all can pay kids as child models. You just have to get clear on what the market is. I call these minor deductions because they're minors. Y'all are better than my last audience because somebody laughed at that. But in fact, when I was in Dallas last weekend, my team was there. My team, I think, was the only one that laughed at that joke. And I was like, really? That's awesome. So anyway, the K Roth is kids. And it's just, whether you use that for a Roth for the kids, it's a great way to reduce your taxes. Just hire your kids. Some people are like, my kids are useless. They're probably tweeting as you think that. And so get them to do some social media. That's a good place to spend $1,000 a month. And then you're in control of their money. So you get the tax deduction. So definitely talk to your tax advisors, your strategist about this, because it's people that aren't doing it are literally missing $3,000 to $4,000 in taxes per kid that they're probably wasting. One of the things that you get with an EQRP is a $50,000 line of credit that's built in. So that was my black card, different name. I'm not Nicholas, but I had a black card when American Express and I were friends back in the early 2000s when I was spending like $100,000 a month. And they give these cards to people when they can't stop spending because they think they're celebrities in Will Smith's Ferrari. So I got the stupid card, thought I was really important, went to Costco. Y'all remember when you could actually go buy more than like one thing of toilet paper? And I tried to get a pallet. The weird part is I was trying to buy a pallet of toilet paper in 2008. I don't know why I was trying to buy a pallet of toilet paper because I was by myself, but I was. And the problem was Costco looked at me and they took my card and they were like, your card's been declined. Now, a black card doesn't have a limit. And I looked at the guy and I said, how could this possibly be declined? Try it again. He's all right. Tries it. He's like, nope. I said, I can get anything I want. I have a black card. And he's like, well, you're not getting toilet paper. I'm like, crap. Or maybe not. Like it was very frustrating. And I found out that American Express had blocked my account. When I called them, I said, what happened? And they said, your balance is 11,000. And I said, yeah, why are you blocking my toilet paper? They said, because your limit is now 11,000. I was in real estate back then and they started taking losses in that industry. And so they froze everybody. Didn't matter. And because my entire life was credit cards, that's how I operated. All of a sudden, like this happened across the board. So I couldn't get toilet paper, gas, food. And if I had an EQRP back then, I could have tapped into my account and had $50,000 so that I didn't end up being homeless, which I was. I was actually living out of my truck for a little while when this thing melted down. So it can be really useful when you need money, or if you want to go buy a car or something and you're like, hey, I don't want to go beg Bank of America. I'm just going to write a check out of my account. Pay yourself back. Anybody speak Portuguese? Does that ring a bell? Anybody? Doesn't look like it. Barata se caro it means cheap objects can be expensive. And the way that I look at this saying is it's basically like you just listen to Einstein, life's too short to argue with stupid people. I think there's a value in choosing wisely. And one of the values is you choose who you're hanging out with, I found James on the internet, so I threw him on here. What are you going to do? Y'all want to listen to people. I was reading some stuff, and James has been out there and he's been doing it. He's not just some guy that went to a seminar and he's like, hey, I'm going to host a dinner and teach you guys what I read in a book or something. Like, he's actually been out there and done it, and he's in the streets, he's in the trenches, he's bleeding. I mean, the reason I have a hat on is because I'm cold, because I'm bald, because I've done so much stuff. I have scar tissue and no hair. It all ran away. This is the process of going through real life. And one of the things that happens with real life is you end up learning that there are rules. I didn't have any rules. That's why I lost that 25 million in 12 months, 20 to -5. I figured I probably ought to have some rules because they protect us from our own glands. And so these are some of my rules. Those 3 that I circled are: 1, I don't hang out with people that are victims or blame or justify their lives. Only self-responsible people. My entire team, they own it. You will not hear us excusing things. We get things done and we take care of each other and we're responsible. Portfolio, I do not invest all my stuff because guess what? I'm going to be wrong. And in general, you're going to be wrong. Anybody that's in business knows that it's not like school where you want to get 100%. That doesn't exist in the real world. So I'm mindful of that. I'm going to be wrong. I don't want to be wrong and have to start over. Already done that 3 times. It is not a fun experience. Don't want to do it again. The last one is I don't invest in bulletproof vest areas. And if you're like, what does that mean? Well, here's what it means. In 2005, I bought an apartment in a very bad part of Memphis, not knowing anything about Memphis because I was remote investing. So it was called Whitehaven and it was by Elvis's house. I mean, how bad could it be? It's by freaking Graceland. So bought the place, and then I got a call and like 6 months into the rehab, it was vacant, the whole thing, 119 units. They said, there's been a problem. Somebody came in and stole all your copper. And I said, well, which copper? They said, all of it. They tore it out of the ground, out of the walls. It's gone. And I go, that's got to be a lot of copper. They're like, well, I mean, it's probably a few $1,000s for somebody that melts it because you could do it back then. But it's about $250,000 of damage. And I was like, okay, well, we got insurance called Lloyd's of London, which I don't recommend. The only problem is sometimes they're the only ones that'll cover because they tend to be really crappy when you have a claim. And they're like, come sue us. We're in London. Come on over. So they covered about 40 cents on the dollar after I got done. I was like, all right, $160,000 mistake. And then my property manager called me 6 months later and said, we got a problem. And I was like, I mean, what? Like, well, they pulled the copper out that we just put back in. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me again. They're like, yeah, but that's not the problem. I was like, that's a $250,000 problem. I'm probably not going to get coverage. They're like, that's not the problem. I go, what's the problem? They said, and I said, wait a second. We have an armed guard there. Where was the armed guard? On break? And I'm getting pissed. I'm like, tell that person to call me. They're like, they're dead. Somebody shot them. And I went, oh, all of a sudden, copper isn't very important. The reason I don't invest in places, the reason I have rules that I invest very carefully where I go is because I don't want the weight of somebody else's life on my shoulders. And the reason that you find people that are kind of Yoda-ish, like James, that have been out there and done it, it's because you want to leverage off of their experiences so you don't have to carry the weight of all of the dumb crap that we do when we're navigating through all this stuff. So choose if you want bulletproof areas. I'm never going back because I don't want somebody else's, their life on my shoulders. Just part of my rules. Most of you know people, if you're not one of them, whether it's millennials or boomers, that are concerned about running out of money before they die. When my dad got sick, one of the things I remember him talking about being concerned about was that he was concerned he was going to be a burden on us kids. And he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to run out of money. I really believe in my heart that he died earlier than he would have because he didn't want to be in a position where we had to start writing checks. He just didn't want that. It was a pride thing. There's a lot of people that have a similar fear that they're going to end up being destitute or something. And we can do something about that. It's called financial literacy. It's education. It's sharing. It's the opposite of it's me for me. And that's it. Like, it's really just sharing information. It's like love. If you give love, it doesn't take it away from you. It's an exponential growth. It spreads. Information's the same thing. So there's something you can do. You can take this information and you can share it with people. There's an easy way to do that. mean, one of the ways is if you have family or friends, if you have people that you're like, I need this person to know, great. I'm happy to, my team is happy to do what we did here tonight. We'll help, we'll educate. We're an education company. We happen to be doing retirement plans, but it's an education company to create financial freedom because of the modern day slavery that's going on that I think is the greatest problem this country has ever faced. This is what you're going to see if we do something. It'll be like one of these events, anytime, anywhere, 7 days a week. Y'all have somebody that needs to know this stuff. We'll Zoom. This is my team. I mean, we're happy to do it. We'll make it happen. This is what happens when you share information. You get to get a cool badge. It's a better badge than a like button on Facebook. You get to be a superhero. You get to be somebody's hero because you gave them a way to not be afraid for their future. And so that's a pretty cool thing. The easiest way to do it is get the information on your phone because then it's everywhere and you can send it to people. If you guys want to get it's a consolidated version of the book, just text the word Junto to that number and it'll send you a copy of the book. I will text you from that number and you guys can give me an address. I'll FedEx you a copy of the QRP book. It'll basically give you what you need. You can share it wherever you want. Just give it away, share it, learn about it. Somebody you know needs this if it's not you. And I guarantee you'll change their life because the alternative to that is not good. It's called bad tattoos. So I really appreciate you guys paying attention and being here. You guys have been awesome. I'm happy to answer questions if there's any, and y'all can reach out to me if you want to connect with me. Just find me on LinkedIn, and I'm super accessible for people that are responsible. So James, if you got any questions, but thank you very much. I appreciate you guys.
That was incredible. Are you able to show your face? Perfect. Awesome. All there right. He is. That was incredible. The stories and the things that happened. This is actually my third time through this set of slides, and I feel like each time I've gotten to go through it, I've got a little bit more every single time. And what you're doing is incredible. I'd love to check to see if anybody has questions. Who here has a 401k or an IRA? Can we see a raise of hands? And I don't know if you can see all of the people. Are you at the right height?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, we got a lot of
everybody raised
people
their
here.
Foot.
We're a little low, yeah. So we've got quite a few people here, and Dave, I saw your hand first. Go ahead.
So I do taxes for a variety of retired personnel as well as myself. Is this a doable strategy for people who are already retired, or do you only have to have a business to be able to take advantage of this?
Were you able to hear that?
Yeah, I'm good. With the question of what's the appropriate or the age restrictions or whatever, we have clients that are brand new that are setting up accounts, and I think our oldest client's 85 and just set up an account last year. And so the requirement is that you have some type of business, and this could be we'll build a business for people. We'll build an online business, a bona fide legitimate business that can create income and does create income. And so it's a digital marketing business. I mean, more businesses are online now, especially the last year than ever before. It's not a hard barrier, and we do it for people all the time, especially when they're retired from a W-2 or 9 to 5 or whatever in their 60s or 70s. That's a really common occurrence. So it's not something that stops us from setting it up.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. We got another question right here.
So I'm a business owner that doesn't have anything, but I have land paid off. What are my options? I mean, I'm looking to invest in the future, but I don't know how to do it.
So in terms of options, it's really about creative thinking, how you can use this system. Usually, so one of the questions, and it kind of ties into what you're saying, and I don't know if you have retirement accounts, but let's say you had nothing, and you're like, okay. So like when I started my first house, I bought and I had negative money. So I used a credit card to buy a house. I used $6,000. And so the reason I bring that up is because people will say, well, I have nothing, or I have $20,000 in an IRA. Is this worth doing? And my thought is yes. Why? Because if you use the Roth account, you're setting yourself up for a zero tax rate. I mean, do you guys think that taxes are going up or down in the future?
Up.
Right.
Up, definitely.
Totally. So what makes sense? not doing anything or getting some money and starting moving assets into a Roth account that's never going to be taxed again. Like there's a strategy to get some money as much as you can over there, and there's ways to do it. So, I mean, we could map those things out, and me or somebody on my team will go through that and just give you some ideas, and maybe they make sense or maybe they don't, but it's worth doing a strategy call. So I'm happy to do that if you want to do it.
And I have to say, I just did the strategy call with Damon's team, and they were the gentleman I spoke with was very sharp, and he understood. I explained my situation and what I've got going on, and I'm a little bit more complicated than the average person, so I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to trek with me, and the guy understood everything I was saying. So it was he's got a really good team, and at least from my experience so far, Damon and I worked with David. He was phenomenal. Do we have any other questions? We only got time for a couple more questions.
So the rules changed a couple of years ago so that any type of retirement account that is inherited, the beneficiary has 10 years to do something with it. And by the end of the 10 years, they have to distribute it. So it used to be that there was a thing called a stretch IRA. It doesn't exist. It's dead. You can't do things like the one I got. Dad died in 2014. So I had that the rest of my life. Those are gone. One strategy I would encourage you all to think about is having your parents or grandparents set up an account, some type of retirement account that's a Roth account, pay them. Like I paid my dad as the chairman of my company, forced him to leave Alaska. I'm like, Dad, I got free Tex-Mex in Texas, and you get a trip. And he's like, all right. So he comes down. It's the only way I could get him to come out. And so I said, part of what I'm going to pay you as chairman is going to go into this retirement account. We're doing this to help build our family's wealth instead of, like we're going to use this going forward. So I did that. And then when he passed away, I inherited it. If y'all did that and you're in a position where you're savvy and you could go out, imagine what would happen if you hired a parent or grandparent to be a chairman, a legitimate position, for their wisdom. And older people are wise. They've just been through stuff. So ultimately you have 10 years with a Roth account to grow it or distribute it. Imagine if you had a pile that you'd help create and it was $100 or $200 or $300,000 that landed in your lap today, and you could grow it and distribute it for the next decade tax-free. Just think about what that tool might look like. Imagine if we're in a tax environment 30, 40, 50%, and that's the minimum you're going to pay. Imagine what you'd be doing. You'd be operating out of that inherited account and paying no taxes. So something to think about with family legacy planning and just family wealth preservation.
Awesome. We got time for one more question. We got any more? Any more questions? No? Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. Can we give him another applause? Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for spending the evening and teaching us how we can reduce our taxable income and break our bondage.
I'm happy to do it. And one thing I'll throw in there, because I think it's important for everybody to really. And by the way, thank you very much for inviting me. I was happy to be able to do this. If y'all want to reach out on LinkedIn, some of you have never heard of Bitcoin. Some of you know what Bitcoin is. If you're curious, but you're like, I don't know how to start, I will help you get started, just because I like to see people take action. So the first 5 people that just say hi on LinkedIn, connect with me, I will send you some Bitcoin for free. So I want to see if anybody's actually an action taker. So just a little random thing, has nothing to do with anything, except I think that's the future, and I want to help as many people as I can not get run over by it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. You did a phenomenal job presenting, and I feel like the information the first time I heard it was a little overwhelming, but each time I've gone through this, the more I understand it, I'm really excited. So anyways, awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks. Have a great evening.
You too. Thanks, everybody.
All right, take care.